Captain Jiho Park stood in the center of the vast chamber, surrounded by beings that looked nothing like him. Some floated in containers, filled with strange liquids. Others had scales that shimmered under the artificial lights. A few were so massive they needed special platforms just to hold their weight. This was the Galactic Council, and today they would decide humanity's fate. Jiho wore his uniform with pride. The blue and silver colors of Earth's diplomatic fleet caught the light as he turned to face the speakers. Behind him stood three other humans: Dr. Yoonji Choi, Ambassador Yuna Kim, and Admiral Minho Kwon. They had come to defend their species against accusations that made Jiho's blood boil. The Velcrin ambassador rose from his seat. He was tall, with 4 arms and skin that looked like polished stone. His voice echoed through the chamber, without need for electronic amplification. Members of the Council, we gather today to address a threat. Humanity has shown itself to be dangerous, unpredictable, and unworthy of membership in our peaceful alliance. Jiho clenched his fists, but remained silent. They had been ordered to let the ambassador speak first. Consider the evidence, the Velcrin continued. In just 23 years, humans have colonized 47 worlds. Most species take centuries to expand to even 5 planets. They build colonies faster than we can monitor them. Their growth is aggressive and alarming. Murmurs rippled through the council. Jiho wanted to shout that humanity colonized quickly because they were efficient, not aggressive. But he stayed quiet. Their military vessels, the Velcrin said, his voice growing louder, are equipped with weapons far beyond what is necessary for defense. They have armor plating 3 times thicker than standard. Their ships carry enough firepower to destroy moons. What peaceful species needs such capabilities? Admiral Minho shifted beside Jiho. The old man had designed many of those ships himself. Every weapon, every shield, every piece of armor had a purpose. Humanity had learned long ago that the universe was not always kind to the unprepared. The Velcrin pressed on. They develop artificial intelligence that exceeds our safety guidelines. They create weapons they refuse to share with the Council. Their culture celebrates violence through their entertainment, their history, their very identity. Tell me, Council members, is this the behavior of a species we can trust? Ambassador Yuna Kim stepped forward. She was young, barely 40, with fire in her eyes. Council members, I ask permission to respond. The council leader, a being made of living crystal, nodded. Yuna's voice was strong and clear. Yes, we colonize quickly, but we do so peacefully. We have not taken a single world that belonged to another species. We build on empty planets and terraform lifeless rocks. Is efficiency a crime? She pointed at the display showing human ships. Yes, our vessels are well armed. We come from a world where we had only ourselves to rely on. We learned that being weak invites disaster. But in all our time as council members, have we started even one conflict? Have we threatened even one species? The chamber was silent. Yuna continued. You call our AI dangerous, yet it has never harmed anyone. You say we won't share our weapons, but neither do most of you. You judge our culture for remembering our struggles, but those struggles made us who we are. We are not perfect, but we are not the monsters you paint us to be. Dr. Yoonji Choi added her voice. We have shared our medicine. Our agricultural techniques have fed billions across the galaxy. Our engineers have helped build stations and ships for other species. We came to the stars seeking friendship, and we have tried to be good neighbors. But Jiho could see it in their faces. The council had already decided. Fear was a powerful thing, and humanity scared them. Not because humans were cruel, but because they were capable. Other species had been in space for thousands of years and moved slowly. Humanity had gone from primitive rockets to faster-than-light travel in less than 3 centuries. They saw that speed and called it dangerous. The Velcrin ambassador smiled. Pretty words, but actions speak louder. I call for a vote. Should humanity be expelled from the Galactic Council and restricted to their home system? The voting began. One by one, species cast their judgment. Jiho watched the numbers climb. 20 votes for expulsion. 30. 35. When it ended, the result was clear. 39 species voted to banish humanity. Only 8 had voted to let them stay. The crystal being who led the council spoke with what might have been regret. The vote is decided. Humanity is deemed a potential threat to galactic peace. You have 1 standard year to withdraw all colonies, stations, and vessels from beyond your home system. All treaties are dissolved. All agreements are terminated. You will remain in your Sol system until such time as the Council decides otherwise. Ambassador Yuna looked like she might cry. Dr. Yunji stared at the floor. But Admiral Minho stood tall, his old face showing no emotion. Jiho followed his example. The Admiral spoke for the first time, his voice calm and cold. We came in peace. We will leave in peace. But remember this day, Council. Remember who stood beside you and who abandoned you. Remember who your true friends were. They walked out of the chamber together. 4 humans, leaving behind a galaxy that had rejected them. Outside, the Earth fleet waited. Hundreds of ships hung in space around the Council station, ready to begin the long journey home. Jiho stood on the bridge of his vessel, watching the station grow smaller in the viewport. Dr. Unji came to stand beside him. What do we do now? She asked quietly. Jiho thought about Earth. He thought about the colonies they had built with their own hands, the dreams they had pursued among the stars. He thought about humanity's long history of surviving impossible odds. We do what we've always done, he said. We survive. We adapt. We remember. And maybe someday, they'll realize they made a mistake. The fleet turned toward home, leaving the Galactic Council behind. None of them knew that 50 years would pass before they saw aliens again. None of them knew that when that day came, it would be the Council begging for help. They only knew that humanity had been cast out for being too strong, too fast, too capable, and that knowledge would shape everything that came next. 50 years had passed since the day humanity left the Galactic Council. Commander Hyun Lee had been born 3 years after the expulsion. He had never met an alien in person. Every story about the Council came from history books and old recordings. To him and his generation, aliens were just something that existed out there, beyond the boundary they were not allowed to cross. Hyun stood on the command deck of the defense station orbiting Neptune. The view showed nothing but stars and the distant sun. His job was to watch those stars and make sure nothing came through that wasn't supposed to. For 50 years, humanity had turned their home system into a fortress. Nobody would ever force them to leave again. The Sol system had changed dramatically. Earth itself was home to 18 billion people now. Mars had sprawling cities under protective domes, housing another 7 billion. Europa's ice-covered oceans held research facilities and underwater colonies. Titan's thick atmosphere had been tamed, its surface now dotted with settlements. Everywhere humans could live, they did. The total population had reached 34 billion souls, all living within the boundaries the Council had set for them, but humanity had not been idle. Freed from Council restrictions and oversight, human scientists had pushed technology forward at an incredible pace. Dr. Suman Bay was one of them. She worked in a laboratory hidden inside an asteroid between Mars and Jupiter. Her team had just achieved something remarkable. Commander Lee. Her voice crackled over the communication system. We've done it. The new drive works exactly as predicted. Hyun leaned forward in his chair. You're certain? It's faster than the Council's technology? 30% faster, Sumin said, and he could hear the smile in her voice. And more stable. We can cross distances that would take them weeks in just days. This was the pattern of the last 50 years. Without aliens watching over their shoulders, without restrictions on research, without limits on what they could build, Humanity had advanced rapidly. Their artificial intelligence was more sophisticated. Their weapons were more powerful. Their ships were faster and stronger. Isolation had given them time to grow in ways the Council never would have allowed. General Taejin Ro commanded the Solar Defense Force from Earth. He was a hard man who believed the expulsion had been the best thing that ever happened to humanity. But not everyone agreed. The old generation, those who remembered aliens as colleagues and friends, felt differently. Admiral Minho Kwon, now retired but still influential, often spoke about the galaxy beyond. "We're human," he would say. "We're meant to explore. We're meant to connect with others. Isolation isn't natural for us." Hyun had heard both arguments many times. He wasn't sure what he believed. Life in the Sol system was good, safe, predictable. Why risk that for aliens who had thrown them away? The answer came on a cold morning when his sensors detected something unusual. A small object was drifting into the outer system, past where Pluto orbited. It wasn't moving under its own power. Something about it seemed wrong. "This is Commander Lee," he said into the communication system. "Unknown object detected at coordinates 773. Sending a retrieval team." The object turned out to be a probe, damaged and barely functioning. They were one of the 8 species that had voted against humanity's expulsion. The probe contained a message, and when Hyun played it, his blood ran cold. The hologram showed an Ixari representative, their feathered crest dull with stress. "To humanity, if this message reaches you, we were wrong. The Council was wrong. In the 50 years since your departure, the galaxy has fallen into chaos. The Velkrin have formed a dominion. They've conquered 7 species completely. 14 more pay them tribute to avoid destruction. They're coming for the rest of us next." The hologram flickered. "The Council tried to stop them. We have no military strength. You took most of our peacekeeping forces when you left. We disbanded the rest because we thought we didn't need them. We thought peace could be maintained through words alone. We were fools." The message was breaking up now, corrupted by damage to the probe. "Please. We don't expect forgiveness. We don't deserve your help. But if you have any mercy, if you remember the friendship we once had, please consider, we need. You were the balance. Without you, everything fell apart." The message ended. Hyun sat in silence, staring at the empty hologram projector. He forwarded the recording to Earth immediately. Within hours, it had reached every major government office and military command center in the system. The debate began immediately. General Taejin was vocal in his opposition. "It's not our problem," he said in the emergency council meeting. "They made their choice. They threw us out. Now they want us to save them? Let them face the consequences." Others disagreed. Dr. Eunji Choi, now 78 years old but still sharp as ever, spoke with passion. "They were wrong to expel us, but that doesn't mean we should abandon innocent people to tyranny. How many billions of beings are suffering under this dominion? Do we really want to be the kind of species that turns our backs on them?" Dr. Suman Bae added her voice. "From a practical standpoint, if the Velkrin dominion continues to grow, eventually they'll come here. We can fight them now while they're dealing with other problems. Or we can wait until they've conquered everyone else. And we face them alone." Hyun listened to all of it. But what he kept thinking about were the stories his grandfather used to tell. His grandfather had served under Jiho Park, had been there the day humanity was expelled. "Captain Park told us something. Before he retired," his grandfather had said. "He said humans protect those who cannot protect themselves. Not because it benefits us, but because it's right. That's what makes us human." The debate went on for 3 days. President So Yun-han, who had been elected just 2 years earlier, finally called for a vote. The government chambers were full as she spoke. "50 years ago, the council judged us as too dangerous, Too aggressive, too different. They were afraid of what we might become. Now they've learned what the galaxy becomes without us. She looked around the room. We have a choice. We can stay here, safe in our fortress, and let the galaxy burn. Or we can remember who we are. We are the species that went to space with primitive rockets because we dreamed of the stars. We are the species that turned Mars from a dead rock into a living world because we refused to give up. We are the species that survived every challenge our own planet threw at us. Her voice grew stronger. The Council abandoned us. But there are innocent species out there who never voted against us. There are beings suffering under tyranny who did nothing wrong. And if we turn away from them, if we let fear keep us isolated, then maybe the Council was right about us after all. The vote was close, but the decision was made. Humanity would answer the call. They would return to the galaxy, not as the expelled members crawling back, but as liberators coming to set things right. Hyun received his new orders the next morning. The Solar Defense Fleet was mobilizing. New ships were being pulled out of hidden construction bays. Weapons that had been developed in secret were being installed. Soldiers were volunteering by the thousands. He stood on his command deck one last time, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, aliens who had once rejected humanity were waiting desperately for help. Somewhere out there, a war was waiting to begin. Prepare the fleet, he ordered. We're going back. The diplomatic vessel came out of faster-than-light travel badly damaged. Its shields flickered weakly, and scorch marks covered its hull. The ship had clearly been in a fight and barely escaped. It broadcast an emergency signal on frequencies that hadn't been used for 50 years. Old council codes that everyone assumed humanity had forgotten. Commander Hyun Lee received the alert at Saturn's defensive line. His fleet surrounded the damaged vessel within minutes. Weapons ready, but not firing. The ship was small, built for diplomacy, not war. And whoever was inside must have been desperate to risk entering Sol system after all these years. Attention, unknown vessel, Hyun broadcast. You have entered restricted space. Identify yourself immediately. The response came in a voice translator that struggled with the old protocols. This is Ambassador Tharen of the Ixari. I carry representatives from the Galactic Council. We request emergency sanctuary and an audience with Earth's government. Please, we have nowhere else to go. Hyun made the decision quickly. You're cleared to approach Saturn Station. Do not deviate from the flight path we're sending you. Any aggressive action will be met with immediate destruction. The diplomatic ship limped toward the station. As it got closer, Hyun could see just how desperate their flight had been. Parts of the hull had melted from weapons fire. One engine was barely functioning. These beings had been lucky to survive. The delegation that emerged from the airlock looked nothing like the confident council members humanity remembered. Ambassador Tharen's feathers were ragged and dull. Chancellor Korim of the Prazeth moved slowly, as if injured. The three other representatives with them looked terrified. These were not the proud aliens who had expelled humanity. These were refugees. They were transported to Earth under heavy guard. Hyun went with them, curious despite himself. He had never seen aliens in person before. The history recordings hadn't prepared him for how different they actually were. How they moved. How they sounded. How they smelled. It was strange and fascinating at the same time. Earth had changed since the Council last saw it. The defensive platforms were visible even from space. Weapons, satellites, tracked every movement. The planet itself was surrounded by layers of protection that would make any invasion incredibly costly. Humanity had spent 50 years making sure they would never be vulnerable again. The delegation was brought to the government center in Geneva. President Soyeon Han waited for them there, along with several others. Admiral Min-ho Kwon, now 93 years old but still sharp-minded, sat in his wheelchair at her side. Dr. Yoon-ji Choi was there too, her face carefully neutral. These two remembered when aliens had been colleagues, even friends. Now they faced beings who had voted to expel them. Ambassador Theron spoke first. His translator worked better here, making his words clear. President Han, on behalf of what remains of the Galactic Council, I thank you for seeing us. I know we have no right to ask for your time or your mercy. Then why are you here? General Taejin Ro asked bluntly. He sat across the table, his expression cold. You made it very clear 50 years ago that we were not welcome in your galaxy, Chancellor Coram answered, his voice heavy with regret. Because we were wrong. Catastrophically, terribly wrong. And now, we are paying the price for our mistake. They displayed a holographic map of the galaxy. Hyun leaned forward to study it. Large sections were marked in red. The Velcrin Dominion, Coram explained. 23 species completely conquered. Their governments dissolved. Their people enslaved or controlled. 14 more species pay tribute to avoid invasion. The Dominion's fleet is larger than all remaining Council forces combined. Theron continued. It started 5 years after you left. The Velcrin began expanding aggressively. We protested. They ignored us. We threatened sanctions. They laughed. We tried to assemble a peacekeeping force. He paused. We had disbanded most of our military after you left. We thought we didn't need it. We thought peace was assured. You thought wrong, General Taejin said flatly. Yes. Theron agreed quietly. The Velcrin had always been ambitious, but your presence kept them in check. You see, when you were there, they feared that any aggression would be met with human military response. Your fleets, your weapons, your reputation as warriors. It balanced the Council. When you left, that balance disappeared. Dr. Unji spoke for the first time. So, you're saying our aggression, the thing you expelled us for, was actually protecting you? Yes, Chancellor Coram said simply. We mistook the shield for the threat. We were afraid of your strength, so we sent you away. And then we learned what true threats look like. The hologram changed, showing images of conquered worlds. Cities in ruins. Populations being moved in massive transport ships. Resources being stripped from planets. It was brutal and efficient. The systematic destruction of everything the Council had claimed to protect. Supreme Overlord Krath rules the Dominion now, Theron said. He is cruel and calculating. He makes no secret of his plans. He intends to rule the entire galaxy within 20 years. Species either join him willingly, or they are crushed. President Soyeon studied the map carefully. And the remaining Council members? What are they doing? Hiding, Coram admitted. Hoping they won't be next. Making deals to buy time. There is no unified defense, no real military, no hope. He looked directly at her. That's why we're here. Theron placed 3 data tablets on the table. We come with requests. First, we ask that humanity rejoin the Galactic Council, with full voting rights and no restrictions. Second, we ask that you share your military technology and tactical knowledge with us. Third, we ask that you lead the defense against the Dominion. The room was silent. Then General Taejin laughed, a harsh sound. You want our guns? Our ships? Our soldiers? You want us to risk our lives for the people who threw us out? That's remarkably brave of you to ask. What do we get? President Soyeon asked coldly. Besides the danger you created with your weakness, Chancellor Coram had prepared for this. Full economic partnerships. Complete technology exchange. No restrictions. A permanent Security Council seat with veto power. And formal apologies, transmitted galaxy-wide, admitting that your expulsion was unjust. Not enough, Dr. Unji said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. You're offering us things we already have. We're self-sufficient now. We don't need your economy. Our technology is ahead of yours. We don't need Council validation. Theren looked desperate. Then what do you want? Why should we help? Dr. Unji asked. Answer that honestly. Why should we risk our children for you? Theron was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke directly to Dr. Unji, his voice soft. Because you're human. And humans, I learned too late. Protect those who cannot protect themselves. Not because it benefits them, but because it's right. You helped species when you were in the council, expecting nothing in return. You shared medicine, food, technology, not for profit, but because people needed help. He gestured at the hologram. There are trillions of innocent beings in those red zones. Children who've never known freedom. Families torn apart. Entire cultures being erased. They didn't vote to expel you. Most of them weren't even born then. But they're suffering now. The old Ixari looked at each human in turn. I voted against your expulsion. I argued that you were necessary. I was ignored. I've spent 50 years watching everything fall apart and knowing I was right. That doesn't help those people. Only you can help them now. President Soyon called for a recess. The human delegation moved to a private room. The debate was intense. General Tajin argued for refusing. It's not our responsibility, he insisted. Let them solve their own problems. But Admiral Minho spoke up, his old voice still carrying authority. When I was young, I served with Captain Jiho Park. He taught me something. He said, humans have always been protectors. Throughout our history, when we saw evil, when we saw oppression, our best people stood up and fought, not because it was profitable, not because it was safe, but because it was right. He looked at General Tajin. If we turn away now, if we hide in our fortress and let trillions suffer, what does that make us? We spent 50 years becoming strong. What's the point of strength if we don't use it to protect the weak? Dr. Yunji nodded. I'm old. I remember when aliens were friends. I remember the expulsion too. Every painful moment. But I also remember why we went to space in the first place. Not to conquer, not to hide, but to explore, to connect, to be part of something larger. President Soyon listened to all arguments. Then she made her decision. They returned to the main room, where the aliens waited anxiously. Humanity will answer the call, President Soyon announced. But understand this. We're not doing it for the Council. We're doing it for the innocent people who never had a voice in our expulsion. We're doing it because it's right. And we're doing it our way. Relief flooded through the alien delegation. Theron actually wept, tears running down his feathered face. Thank you. Thank you. Don't thank us yet, Commander Hyun said grimly. You have no idea what you just unleashed. The hangar bay doors opened slowly, revealing what humanity had built in 50 years of isolation. Ship after ship emerged from hidden construction facilities, scattered throughout the Sol system. They were sleek and deadly, covered in armor that seemed to absorb light itself. Their weapons bristled from every angle. These were not the ships the Council remembered. Ambassador Theron stood on the observation deck of Earth's orbital station, watching the fleet assemble. Beside him, Chancellor Korim counted quietly. 200, 300, 400. His voice faded as the numbers kept climbing. 847 warships, Fleet Admiral Hyun Lee said, coming to stand beside them. He had been promoted just days ago, given command of the entire operation. Each one built with technology you've never seen. Each one crewed by people who've trained their entire lives for war. The aliens stared in disbelief. The Council's entire remaining fleet numbered maybe 300 ships, and most of those were outdated. This single human fleet was larger and more advanced than everything else in the galaxy combined. Dr. Sumin Bai gave a presentation to the gathered Council representatives. She displayed the new faster-than-light drive she had perfected. We can travel 30% faster than your best ships, she explained. We can also jump more frequently without cooldown periods. This gives us tactical superiority in any engagement. She showed them the weapons next. Our missiles use adaptive targeting. They can change course mid-flight and phase through standard shields. Our energy weapons operate on frequencies that bypass traditional defenses. We've had 50 years to think about how to fight, and we've thought about it very carefully. Very carefully. The defensive systems were even more impressive. Our shields analyze incoming fire and adapt in real time. Every shot they take makes them stronger against that type of weapon. Our armor is self-repairing at the molecular level. And if all else fails, our AI can pilot damaged ships remotely to safety. Chancellor Coram looked overwhelmed. How? How did you advance so far so quickly? Dr. Suman smiled slightly. You left us alone. No oversight committees. No restrictions on research. No regulations about what we could or couldn't study. We had unlimited freedom and a very strong motivation to never be vulnerable again. The volunteer numbers shocked everyone. 12,000 human soldiers had signed up in the first week alone. More kept coming. Ben, these were people who had grown up hearing stories about the expulsion, who had been taught that the galaxy was dangerous and humanity needed to be strong. Now, they had a chance to prove it. Lieutenant Nario was one of them. She was 26 years old, had never left the Sol system, and couldn't wait to see alien worlds. My grandmother told me stories, she said during her interview, about the day we left, about how the council threw us away. I want to show them what a mistake that was. The fleet prepared to depart. The destination was the Ixari homeworld, currently under siege by 3 Dominion battle groups. It would be humanity's first combat operation in 50 years, and Fleet Admiral Hyun wanted it to send a message. Commander Daeho Song led the first strike wing. He commanded 12 ships, all of them equipped with the latest stealth technology. As they approached Ixari space, his sensors showed the Dominion forces clearly. 3 battle groups meant roughly 90 enemy ships, arranged in a blockade pattern around the planet. They don't see us yet, his tactical officer reported. Their sensors are based on old Council technology. Our stealth systems are generations ahead. Daeho watched the enemy formations. They were confident, relaxed even. They thought no help was coming. They had no idea what was about to hit them. All ships, he broadcast. Engage on my mark. Target their command vessels first. Make it count. The strike wing dropped stealth simultaneously and opened fire. Missiles streaked across space, each one adjusting course to follow its target, even as the enemy ships tried to evade. Energy beams cut through shields like they weren't there. The first Dominion command ship exploded before its crew even realized they were under attack. The enemy scrambled to respond. Alarms blared. Ships tried to turn to face this new threat, but they were too slow. Human vessels moved like dancers, predicted every countermove, and struck with precision. Within 10 minutes, 20 Dominion ships were destroyed or disabled. That's when the rest of the human fleet arrived. 800 more ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. The Dominion forces looked at their sensors, and their confidence shattered. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and completely outmatched. The battle lasted 37 minutes. The Dominion forces fought hard, but they had never faced an enemy like this. Human tactics were unpredictable and aggressive. Every time they thought they found a pattern, it changed. Every time they tried to group up for defense, human ships would appear from unexpected angles. Commander Daeho's wing eliminated 2 more command ships. The remaining Dominion forces broke formation and ran. The humans let them go, focused instead on liberating the planet below. On the Dominion flagship, Supreme Overlord Krath received the battle report. His communications officer was shaking. My lord, 3 battle groups, gone, defeated in less than an hour. The enemy is human. Krath stared at the data in disbelief. Impossible. The humans were primitives. They were expelled from the Council decades ago. How could they do this? Krath stared at the data, His military advisor spoke quietly. My lord. They were quarantined to their home system with nothing to do but prepare for war. They've had 50 years to focus entirely on military advancement. And now they're here. Krath crushed the data tablet in his massive hand. Then we will crush them with overwhelming numbers. Send word to all Dominion forces. I want every available ship ready for deployment, but the humans were already moving. Over the next 6 months, they systematically liberated, conquered worlds. The Battle of Praxis Station saw Fleet Admiral Hyun Lee outmaneuver 3 Dominion admirals simultaneously, using fake retreat patterns to split their forces before destroying them piecemeal. On Korath 7, human marines made planetfall to rescue a population that was being forcibly relocated. Lieutenant Nari O led her squad through the capital city, fighting Dominion ground troops who had never faced human soldiers before. The Dominion troops were strong and well-armed, but they moved predictably. Humans moved like chaos, appearing from impossible angles, using tactics that made no logical sense, until suddenly the enemy was surrounded and defeated. Nari's squad reached the detention center, where civilians were being held. She blasted the door open and helped thousands of aliens to safety. An old alien woman grabbed her hand, speaking in a language Nari's translator struggled with. But the meaning was clear in her eyes. Get them to the transports, Nari ordered her squad. We're not leaving anyone behind. Special operations teams struck at Dominion Forge worlds, the industrial planets where weapons and ships were constructed. These missions were dangerous and required getting past heavy security. But human stealth technology and tactical training proved superior. Factories exploded. Supply lines were disrupted. The Dominion war machine began to falter. But humanity paid a price too. 127 ships were lost in combat. 8,400 soldiers died in battle. Every death was mourned. Memorial services were broadcast across both human and council space. Families grieved for sons and daughters who would never come home. Ambassador Theron attended one of the memorial services on Earth. He stood in the back, watching as the names were read aloud. Each human who had died defending aliens they had never met. He wept openly, his translator barely able to process his words. Dr. Yoonji Choi stood beside him. The humankind, she said softly. We remember when we needed help, and there was none. So we help others, even when it costs us everything. The Dominion forces began to retreat toward their core territories. They had lost dozens of battles and hundreds of ships. Their subordinate species were rebelling, seeing human strength and daring to hope for freedom. The war was turning, but the hardest battles were still ahead. Supreme Overlord Krath gathered his remaining forces at Velkrin Prime, the Dominion homeworld. He had 800 ships left, and he was preparing for a final stand. He broadcast a message across the galaxy. Humans, I underestimated you. The Council threw you away as violent primitives, and I believed them. But I see now what you truly are. You are conquerors wearing the mask of protectors. Join me instead. Together, we could rule this entire galaxy. Fleet Admiral Hyun Lee received the message on the bridge of his flagship. His officers waited for his response. When it came, it was broadcast galaxy-wide, so everyone could hear. Supreme Overlord Krath. You see strength and assume conquest. You see power and assume domination. That's the difference between us. We don't seek to rule. We seek to protect. We fight not for territory or resources, but for people who cannot fight for themselves. And that's why you've already lost. The human fleet began its final approach to Velkrin Prime. The greatest battle was about to begin. The human fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Velkrin system. 800 ships arranged in formations that had been practiced 1,000 times. Fleet Admiral Hyun Lee stood on his command bridge, studying the tactical display. The Dominion had assembled their remaining forces here. 800 Dominion ships versus 800 human ships. On paper, it looked even. All ships, Hyun broadcast. Remember your training. Remember what we're fighting for. Not for glory, not for conquest, for all the innocent people who've suffered under tyranny. For the galaxy we want to build, not the one we were given. The Dominion fleet moved to intercept. Supreme Overlord Krath commanded from his massive flagship, a vessel that was half warship and half mobile fortress. He had studied human tactics for months now, analyzed every battle, learned from every defeat. He had adapted his strategies, trained his forces in new formations. He was ready. The first exchange of fire lit up space like a new sun. Missiles crossed paths in complex patterns. Energy beams created a web of destruction. Ships on both sides took damage. Shields, flaring, and failing. The Dominion had learned. They no longer moved, predictably. They no longer grouped together, where they could be easily targeted. Commander Deho Song led his strike wing against the Dominion right flank. His ships engaged in a running battle with enemy vessels that actually anticipated his maneuvers. "They're using our own tactics," his tactical officer reported. "They've adapted." "If the Mens did, then we adapt further," Deho responded. He changed formations mid-battle, switching to a pattern so aggressive it was almost suicidal. His ships drove deep into enemy territory, causing chaos and confusion. The Dominion forces tried to surround them, but that's exactly what he wanted. "Now," he ordered. His ships unleashed a new weapon that Dr. Suman Bey had designed specifically for this battle. Electromagnetic pulses that targeted ship systems rather than hulls. Dominion vessels suddenly found their weapons offline, their shields failing, their engines sputtering. They were sitting ducks. But the Dominion had surprises too. Krath had equipped his ships with ramming prows, massive reinforced structures designed for close combat. If human ships got too close, Dominion vessels would ram them, using their superior mass as a weapon. 3 human ships were destroyed this way, before they learned to keep their distance. The battle raged for hours. Both sides took heavy casualties. Ships exploded into expanding clouds of debris. Escape pods launched from dying vessels. The space around Velkrin Prime became a graveyard of metal and lost lives. Then, something unexpected happened. New signatures appeared on the sensors. Ships were arriving, but not human ships. Not Dominion ships either. These were Council vessels. The species that had been liberated over the past months had gathered their own fleets and come to help. The Ixari brought 60 ships. The Prazeth brought 40. 7 other species contributed what they could. It wasn't much compared to the main battle, but it meant everything. These people who had been conquered and enslaved were now fighting for their freedom. Inspired by human sacrifice, they had found their courage. Ambassador Theron was on the lead Ixari vessel. He had never commanded a warship before, but he refused to stay behind. For everyone who suffered, he broadcast to his small fleet. For everyone we lost. For the humans who came back when they had every reason to abandon us. Forward, the reinforcements changed the momentum. The Dominion forces, already struggling against human tactics and technology, couldn't handle fighting on multiple fronts. Their formations began to break apart. Ships tried to retreat but found their escape routes blocked. Supreme Overlord Krath saw his perfect defense crumbling. In desperation, he activated his final weapon. Deep inside his flagship, a device began to power up. It was a doomsday weapon, something so terrible that even the old council had banned it. If he couldn't win, he would take everyone with him. The weapon would create a massive energy wave that would destroy every ship in the system, friend and enemy alike. Human sensors detected the power buildup immediately. "Fleet Admiral," the tactical officer reported, voice tight with fear. "The flagship is charging some kind of weapon. Energy levels are off the scale. If it fires, we're all dead." Hyun made a decision instantly. "All ships, target the flagship. Everything we have. We need to destroy it before that weapon activates. Hundreds of human ships turned toward the massive Dominion flagship. But it was too well protected, surrounded by layers of defensive vessels, willing to die for their overlord. The humans would never get through in time. That's when Commander Daeho Song made his choice. Strike wing, follow me. Full speed toward that flagship. We're going to ram it. Sir, that's suicide, his tactical officer said. I know, Daeho replied calmly. But if we don't stop that weapon, everyone dies anyway. At least this way, most of them live. Tell my family, I did my duty. His 12 ships accelerated to maximum speed, abandoning defense entirely. Dominion fire tore through them. Ships exploded. Hulls were breached. Crews died at their stations. But they kept coming. 3 ships made it through. 2 ships. 1 ship. Commander Daeho Song's vessel, burning and breaking apart, crashed into the Dominion flagship's power core. The explosion was spectacular. The doomsday weapon overloaded before it could fire, taking the flagship and Krath with it. The Dominion forces, seeing their leader dead and their flagship destroyed, lost all will to fight. Ships began to surrender. Others tried to flee. The battle was over. The cost had been terrible. 207 human ships destroyed. 15,000 dead. The small council fleet had lost half its numbers. But they had won. The Dominion was broken. Krath was dead. The galaxy was free. 3 months later, a ceremony was held on Earth. Representatives from 31 species gathered in Geneva. The memorial for those who died was constructed in the center of the city, a massive wall with every name carved into it. Commander Daeho Song's name was at the top, along with all the crew members who had died with him. President So-yeon Han spoke to the gathered crowd. We did not return for glory. We did not fight for conquest. We returned because when we look at the stars, we see neighbors, not enemies. We see potential friends, not resources. That is humanity's real strength. Not our weapons or our ships, but our unwillingness to abandon those who need help. The Galactic Council was reformed with a new charter. It included what became known as the Human Clause. No species could be expelled for being too effective at defending others. A joint military command was established, with rotating leadership that included humans in key positions. Mutual defense treaties were signed with species across the galaxy. Fleet Admiral Hyun Lee chose to retire from active service. He accepted a position teaching at the new Interspecies Military Academy, where humans and aliens would train together. I've seen enough war, he told his officers. Now I want to teach the next generation how to prevent it. Dr. Suman Bae continued her research, but now she worked alongside alien scientists. They combined human innovation with alien knowledge, creating technologies that neither could have developed alone. She often said that the best ideas came from different perspectives working together. Dr. Eunji Choi, now in her 80s, met with Ambassador Theron one final time before she retired. They sat in a garden on Earth, watching the sunset. Was it worth it? Theron asked quietly. Eunji was quiet for a long moment. Ask me in another 50 years, she finally said. Then she smiled. But I think yes. We learned something important. Both species did. You learned that peace requires strength. We learned that strength requires purpose. Together, maybe we can build something better than either of us could alone. General Taejin Ro, who had argued against intervention, admitted to Hyun at the Academy's opening ceremony. I was wrong. I thought isolation would keep us safe. But safety without purpose is just another kind of prison. You were right to push for going back. Hyun shook his head. I wasn't sure at the time. I just remembered something my grandfather told me. He served with Captain Jiho Park, back when we were first expelled. Not because we gained something, but because it's the right thing to do. New trade routes opened across the galaxy. Human merchant vessels traveled freely now, no longer restricted to their home system. Young humans could see alien worlds, and young aliens could visit Earth. The barriers that had existed for 50 years began to crumble. In a small school on Mars, a teacher told her students about the war. A young girl named Minseo raised her hand. "Teacher, what are humans? Why did we help the aliens who threw us away?" The teacher, who had lost her brother in the Battle of Velkrin Prime, thought carefully about her answer. Humans are the species that was expelled for being too dangerous, and when those same people needed us, we came back anyway. Not because we had to, but because that's who we are. We're the ones who protect those who cannot protect themselves. We're human. And that means something. She pulled up a hologram showing Earth surrounded by ships from dozens of different species. All of them bore the new Galactic Council insignia, a circle of stars with a blue world at its center. "That's us," she said. "The species that was cast out and returned to save everyone. The species that turns enemies into friends. The species that believes strength should protect, not conquer." Minseo looked at the hologram with wide eyes. "When I grow up, I want to be like that too." "You will be," the teacher said. "You already are. You're human. That's all you need to be." Outside, the stars shone bright in Mars's thin atmosphere. Somewhere out there, on hundreds of worlds, billions of beings lived in peace because humanity had chosen compassion over bitterness. The galaxy was not perfect, would never be perfect, but it was better. And it was better because one species had refused to let rejection define them. Earth's defensive platforms still surrounded the planet, a reminder that strength was necessary. But now they protected not just humanity, but all the species that had learned to trust humans. The fortress had become a sanctuary. Fleet Admiral Hyun Lee stood in his classroom at the academy, looking at students of 20 different species. Humans sat beside aliens, who had once feared them. They studied tactics together, learned languages together, trained together. "The Galactic Council made a mistake 50 years ago," he told his class. "They feared strength and forgot that strength is only as good or evil as those who wield it. They learned that lesson the hard way. Never forget it yourselves. Strength without compassion is tyranny, but compassion without strength is helplessness. Together, they create protection. That's what we offer the galaxy now. That's what it means to be human." On Earth, on Mars, on Europa, and Titan, and hundreds of worlds across the galaxy, life continued. Humans and aliens worked together, learned from each other, built a future together. It wasn't the future anyone had expected 50 years ago when humanity was expelled. It was better, because humanity had proven that being cast out doesn't define you. How you respond to being cast out defines you, and humanity had responded with strength, courage, and an unwavering commitment to protect others, even those who had wronged them. That was the human way. That was why the galaxy needed them, and that was why they would never be cast out again.